I packed my tool bags in the maintenance bay at 3:15 that morning. Still had grease under my fingernails from the diesel work. That's pretty much how every shift ended. Hands dirty, bags heavy. That particular ache in my shoulders from crawling around generator housings for the last 10 hours. The night crew was already clearing out. I could hear voices echoing down the corridor. Someone laughing about something that probably wasn't funny outside of hour 9 of a graveyard shift. I zipped the main bag shut and slung it over my shoulder. The weight felt familiar, comforting kind of, like I knew exactly what I had and where it was. I'd been working at Idaho National Laboratory for 6 years. Electrician, mostly generator and breaker work, some instrumentation when they needed an extra pair of hands. It was solid work, good pay. The kind of job where you showed up, did the thing, went home. No drama. Or that's how it used to be. Lately it felt different. Hard to pin down exactly why. Just this low hum of uncertainty that started creeping in maybe 3 months back. Budgets got tighter. Contractors got quieter. Management started using words like efficiency and restructuring in the monthly all-hands emails. I'd seen it before at other sites. You learn to read the signs when you've bounced around enough jobs in the nuclear industry. So I kept my tools organized, kept my truck maintained, kept my resume updated on my laptop at home. Not that I'd sent it anywhere yet. Just in case. I walked out through the equipment room and past the main desk where Kowalski was logging end-of-shift notes. He didn't look up. I didn't say anything. That was normal. The air outside hit cold. January in the Idaho desert, middle of the night. Clear sky, no moon. Just that massive stretch of dark overhead and the security lights cutting white pools across the parking lot. My truck was parked in the third row. A 2008 Silverado that ran fine, but burned oil. I tossed my bags in the bed and climbed in. Engine turned over on the first try. Small wins. I sat there for a second, letting the cab warm up, and that's when my brain did the thing it always does after a shift. Started chewing on the work I couldn't quite finish. The breaker problem at the Advanced Test Reactor Complex was bugging me. We'd been running load tests on the diesel generators all week. Standard stuff. You fire up the gensets, simulate a grid loss, make sure the automatic transfer switches do their job and the backup power kicks in clean. Should be simple. I'd done it 100 times. But the diesels kept tripping. Not every time. That would have been easier to track. Just often enough to be a pattern. The start sequence would kick off normal, fuel pressure good, oil pressure climbing right, and then halfway through the ramp-up, the breaker would pop. No alarms, no fault codes. Just a clean trip like something told it to stop. I'd checked the relay settings twice. Pulled the breaker panels and inspected every connection. Swapped out the control module on Genset 3 because I thought maybe the logic board was glitching. Nothing changed. My supervisor, Edwin, told me to log it and move on. We had other work stacked up. But it stuck in my head, the kind of problem that doesn't make sense, and I hate those. Diesel generators are supposed to be dumb and reliable. You give them fuel and air, and they run. If they don't run, there's a reason. There's always a reason. I just couldn't find it. I put the truck in reverse and backed out of the spot, still turning the problem over. Maybe it was a grounding issue. Maybe the load bank we were using for the test had a short I didn't catch. Maybe the breakers themselves were worn out and needed replacement, even though they tested fine on the bench. Maybe I was overthinking it. Probably that. I was halfway across the lot when I saw Edwin's truck still parked near the admin building. That was weird. He usually cleared out right at shift change. I slowed down. Thought about just driving past. But Edwin had been decent to me, and if he was still here at 3:30 in the morning, something was probably up. I pulled into the spot next to his truck and killed the engine. The admin building door was propped open. I walked in and found Edwin in the hallway outside the security office, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He looked tired, more than usual. "Jeffrey," he said. "Hey, you heading out?" "Yeah. He nodded. Didn't say anything for a second. Just stood there like he was thinking about whether to say the next part. "Keep your badge on you," he said finally. I waited. "Even off site," he added. "Don't leave it in your truck. Don't leave it at home. Keep it in your pocket." "Okay," I said. I didn't ask why. Edwin wasn't the kind of guy who said things for no reason, but he kept going anyway. "Security's jumpy," he said. "I don't know what's going on, but they've been running extra patrols all week. Checkpoints at weird hours. They pulled Davidson in yesterday for a badge audit that took 3 hours. 3 hours for a guy who's worked here 15 years. I frowned. He get cleared? Eventually. But they went through everything. His logs, his access history, even his personal vehicle registration. Turned normal paperwork into a full interrogation. They say why? Edwin shook his head. No. And I asked. They just said it's procedural. But it's not. I've been here 26 years. This isn't procedural. I didn't know what to say to that. Edwin was the most by-the-book supervisor I'd ever worked with. If he thought something was off, it probably was. "Just keep your badge on you," he said again. "And if they stop you, don't argue. Answer what they ask, nothing extra." "Got it." He looked at me for another second, then nodded and pushed off the wall. "Drive safe." "Yeah, you too." I walked back out to my truck, and that low hum of uncertainty I'd been feeling, it got a little louder. I pulled out through the main gate at 3:40. The guard waved me through without even checking my pass. That was normal. Night shift, familiar face, INL decal on the windshield. But I thought about what Edwin said. Security's jumpy. Didn't feel jumpy right then. Felt dead quiet. I turned south onto US 20, heading for Idaho Falls. 26 miles of empty desert highway. Nothing but sagebrush and darkness on both sides. I'd driven this route maybe 1,000 times. Knew every pothole, every curve, every spot where the deer liked to cross. The plan was coffee and a bed, in that order. There was a gas station off Yellowstone Highway that opened at 4. I'd grab a large cup of whatever they had hot, drive the last few minutes to my apartment, and crash for 6 hours before I had to think about anything else. That was the plan. My headlights cut a tunnel through the dark. The road was mine. Not another car in sight. I turned the radio on. Some talk station out of Pocatello. Guy rambling about grain futures. I left it. The noise helped. My mind drifted back to the breaker problem. I started mentally walking through the wiring diagrams, tracing the load paths, trying to figure out what I'd missed. Then I saw the lights. Brake lights. A lot of them. Stacked up maybe 2 miles past the INL turnoff, right in the middle of nowhere. I eased off the gas and rolled closer. Portable barricades. The orange and white kind you see at construction zones. They were set up across both lanes, funneling traffic into a single choke point. Men in tan uniforms stood in front of the barricades. 4 of them, maybe 5. They had rifles, not slung on their backs, in their hands. Headlights swept across windshields as they waved cars forward one at a time. Flashlights in the windows, quick exchanges I couldn't hear from where I was. This wasn't INL security. Wrong uniforms, wrong spot. I didn't know what it was. The car ahead of me got waved through. I rolled forward. My heart kicked up a little. Not panic, just that edge of alertness you get when something doesn't fit. One of the guys stepped out into my lane and raised his hand. I stopped. He walked toward my truck. Tall, solid build, rifle held ready but not aimed. His uniform had patches I didn't recognize. Tan plate carrier, gloves, radio headset. He moved with that specific kind of posture you see in guys who've done military or high-end contract work. I rolled my window down. He stopped next to my door and swept his flashlight across my face, then down into the cab. His eyes were gray, angular jaw, a thin scar cut through his left eyebrow. "Where are you coming from?" he said. His voice was flat, command tone, not asking, confirming. INL, I said. Just got off shift. He didn't respond, just kept looking at me. I waited. Step out of the vehicle, he said. The man kept his flashlight on me, didn't blink much. There's been a chlorine release, he said, same flat tone as before. Drifting toward Idaho Falls, we're turning traffic around. I sat there with my hands still on the wheel. Chlorine release. That should have made sense. INL handled all kinds of stuff, some of it pretty nasty, but chlorine wasn't really one of them. Not in the section where I'd been working tonight anyway. We ran diesel generators, electrical systems, instrumentation. No chlorine tanks, no chemical processing that would need it. I didn't say that, just nodded. The man stepped back half a foot, angling his body so the rifle stayed between us, not pointed at me, just there. Turn your vehicle around and return to town by an alternate route. Got it, I said. He moved his flashlight off my face, sweeping it once more through the cab. Tool bags on the passenger seat, thermos in the cup holder. Nothing interesting. Then he stepped back toward the barricade and waved at someone I couldn't see. I rolled the window up. My hands were steady. That surprised me a little. I put the truck in reverse, backed up about 10 feet, then swung it around in a wide arc. The other vehicles behind me were doing the same thing, headlights cutting across empty sagebrush as they turned. Nobody was talking. Nobody was asking questions. I got the truck facing north again and started rolling. The wind hit my windshield at an angle, pushing a thin haze of dust across the asphalt. I watched it move, southwest to northeast. Same direction it had been blowing all night. Same as it always did this time of year. If there was a chlorine release drifting toward Idaho Falls, the wind was pushing it the wrong way. Idaho Falls was south. The dust was going north and east, back toward the site. I kept driving. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the wind shifted in the last hour. Maybe there was some micro-pattern out here I didn't know about. But I'd driven this stretch 5 nights a week for 6 years. The wind didn't really change that much. I pulled my phone out of my jacket pocket, keeping one hand on the wheel. Figured I'd check the weather. Maybe there was an alert or something official I'd missed. No service. I looked at the screen. 1 bar, then nothing. Then 1 bar again. Flickering. I'd had full signal 2 miles back. Out here, you didn't always get great coverage, but you got something. This was different. I set the phone in the cup holder and kept driving. The road curved slightly, following the terrain. I could see the other cars ahead of me, maybe 3 or 4, all heading back the way we'd come. The checkpoint was behind me now, just a glow of orange light in my mirrors. My work radio was clipped to my belt. I'd forgotten about it. Most nights I turned it off after clocking out, but tonight I hadn't bothered. I reached down and flicked the volume knob. Static. I turned it up a little more, cycling through the channels. Maintenance frequencies were quiet. Security channels were quiet. Then I hit the emergency band and got a burst of noise that wasn't static. Need backup at the MFC North Access. We have... A man's voice. Tight. Scared, maybe. Then it cut off. I kept the dial there and waited. Nothing. Just dead air. I glanced in the rear view. The checkpoint was still back there, maybe half a mile now. Rifles still visible in the orange light. The man who'd talked to me was still standing in the road. I looked forward again. The radio hissed. I didn't like this. Any of it. The checkpoint made no sense. The chlorine story made no sense. And now the emergency band was lighting up and going dark again, which really made no sense. Edwin's voice came back to me. Security's been jumpy. Running extra patrols. Checkpoints at weird hours. Yeah, weird hours. I reached up and killed my headlights. The road went dark in front of me, just the faint glow of the dash and the ambient light from the stars. I could still see the asphalt, barely. I slowed down to maybe 30 and kept going. Nobody behind me did the same thing. Their headlights stayed on. I watched them in the mirror, spreading out as they took different routes back toward town. I wasn't going back toward town. I took the next left onto Lincoln Boulevard, a service road that ran along the inside fence line. It wasn't gated, wasn't restricted. It was just a maintenance access route that paralleled the southern perimeter for about 8 miles before it hit another junction. I'd used it a few times when traffic was backed up, or when I needed to get to the East Campus without looping all the way around. The road was rougher than the highway, cracked asphalt, some gravel patches. My truck handled it fine. I kept my lights off. To my right, the fence line ran parallel about 100 yards out. Chain link, 12 feet tall, topped with razor wire. Past that, the site opened up into a mix of low buildings, access roads, and the taller shapes of the reactor complexes. I could see some of them from here, the towers, the darker blocks of secured buildings. A few security lights still on, casting yellow pools across empty pavement. No movement. I kept driving, aiming south. If I stayed on Lincoln long enough, I could cut down toward Blackfoot. Maybe pick up Route 26 and loop back to Idaho Falls from the west. It'd take an extra 40 minutes, but it'd get me around the checkpoint, assuming the checkpoint was the only one. I didn't know why I was assuming that. The radio crackled again. I turned it up. "Phoenix, this is Courtney. Do you copy?" A woman's voice. Clipped, fast. I recognized the cadence. Dispatch. "Phoenix, this is Courtney. Respond." Silence. "Phoenix Valdez, this is Site Dispatch. Please respond." Her voice was getting sharper, not louder, just tighter. I kept my eyes on the road, but my hand stayed on the radio. "Phoenix, if you can hear this, we have multiple calls from the MFC. We need confirmation of your status." MFC, Materials and Fuels Complex. That was East Campus, maybe 4 miles from where I was right now. "Phoenix, please respond." Nothing. I slowed the truck a little, coasting. The road ahead was empty. The fence line to my right was empty. Everything out here was empty. "Phoenix Valdez, this is Courtney Boyd, Site Dispatch. If you are receiving this transmission, key your radio twice." Silence. Then, "Anyone on Protective Force Patrol, this is Site Dispatch. I need confirmation of Unit Phoenix's last known location. Respond on this channel." Her voice cracked a little on the last word. Not much, just enough. I waited. Nobody answered. "This is Site Dispatch. Any Protective Force unit, please respond." Dead air. I looked out at the site. The buildings were still there. The lights were still on. But nobody was talking. Courtney's voice came back, tighter now. "This is Courtney Boyd, Site Dispatch, calling any available unit. We have an active emergency at the Materials and Fuels Complex, and I need immediate confirmation of personnel status in that sector." Pause. "Please respond." I kept driving. My hands were tight on the wheel now. I kept the radio turned up, one hand on the wheel, watching the fence line roll past in the dark. Courtney kept calling for Phoenix. Same pattern every 30 seconds or so. Professional at first, then tighter. She'd say his name. Wait. Say it again with his last name attached. Phoenix Valdez. Like using both names would make him answer. I slowed down to maybe 20 miles per hour. Didn't want to miss anything on the radio, and didn't want to hit a pothole I couldn't see without headlights. Then the channel popped, and someone was breathing hard into the mic. "Dispatch." The voice came through ragged, male, out of breath. "This is Valdez." I eased off the gas. Just let the truck roll. Courtney's response came back fast. "Phoenix, what's your status? I've been calling for..." "I'm at the hot cell." He was still breathing heavy. Not like he'd been running. More like he'd been fighting. "There's an intruder inside the building. We engaged, but..." Static broke it up for a second. When it cleared, Phoenix was still talking. "Won't go down. Rifle fire isn't stopping it. It. Not him. Not them." I waited for Courtney to ask what he meant. She didn't. Just said, "Copy, I'm sending backup to your location. Stay on this channel." "Negative." Phoenix's voice cracked a little. Do not send anyone inside. We're falling back to... The mic popped. Not static. Something else. A wet ripping sound that cut through the speaker and made me flinch. Then the channel went dead. I stared at the radio clipped to my belt. Courtney called his name again. Twice. No answer. I picked up my phone from the cup holder. Still one bar flickering. I tried pulling up a browser anyway. Nothing loaded. Just a spinning wheel. I set it back down. The road ahead split into two options. Straight would keep me on Lincoln for another 3 miles before hitting the junction. Left was a gravel service track I'd used maybe a dozen times during outage work. Utility access that cut through to some underground corridors without staying on main roads. Faster if you knew it was there. Rougher, but direct. I thought about what I'd heard. An intruder that rifle fire wouldn't stop. Phoenix using the word it. Courtney not questioning that. The checkpoint with armed guys in the wrong uniforms telling a story about chlorine that didn't make sense. Edwin warning me to keep my badge on me because security was jumpy. None of it added up to something I understood, but all of it added up to something wrong. I turned left onto the gravel track. The Silverado's suspension rattled over the uneven surface. I kept my speed down, maybe 15 now, watching the road through the windshield. My headlights were still off. Didn't want anyone seeing me if they were looking. The track ran about half a mile before it hit a service gate. Chain link, same 12-foot height as the perimeter fence, with a padlock and chain looped through the frame. I'd been through it before. Maintenance had the combination. I slowed as I approached, ready to stop and get out. The chain was on the ground. I stopped the truck maybe 20 feet back and stared at it. The chain was just lying there in the dust, one end still hooked through the gate, the other end cut clean. Not rusted through, not broken. Cut. I put the Silverado in park and sat there, engine idling. Radio quiet now. Courtney had stopped calling. The gate was open about 3 feet, enough to walk through, enough to drive through if you angled it right. I looked past it, down the track. My eyes had adjusted enough to make out shapes in the starlight. About 50 yards in, something big sat off to the side. Boxy, light-colored. I squinted, looked like a vehicle. I checked my phone one more time, no service. I thought about backing up, turning around, getting back on Lincoln and driving until I hit a town with working cell towers. That would have been smart. Probably. Instead, I shifted into drive and nosed through the gate. The gravel crunched under my tires. I rolled forward slow, no headlights, watching that boxy shape get clearer. It was a vehicle. SUV. White with some kind of markings on the side. I got closer. Department of Energy Security. The decal on the door was standard issue. I'd seen 100 of them. The SUV was angled across the track like someone had stopped in a hurry. Both doors were open. Driver's side and passenger side just hanging there. The interior light was on, spilling out onto the dirt in a pale wash. I stopped my truck about 10 feet back and killed the engine. For a few seconds, I just sat there, listened, heard wind pushing dust across the gravel, heard my own breathing, nothing else. I reached for my flashlight in the door pocket, standard 6-cell mag light, heavy enough to double as a pry bar if I needed it. I got out, boots hitting the gravel, and eased the door shut without slamming it. The air was cold, maybe 30 degrees. I could see my breath. I walked toward the SUV, flashlight in my right hand, not turned on yet. I figured this was an accident, or someone responding to something and bailing out in a hurry. Maybe they'd gone on foot to deal with whatever Phoenix had been talking about. I stopped next to the driver's door and looked inside. Keys still in the ignition. Radio handset hanging off the dash by its coil cord. A thermos in the cup holder. Paperwork clipped to a board on the passenger seat. No blood, no damage. Just empty. I stepped back and swept my eyes across the area. Dirt, gravel, low scrub brush. The fence line about 30 yards to my right. Utility corridor access hatch another 20 yards ahead. A concrete square set into the ground with a steel cover. Then I saw the boots. They were sticking out from behind the rear tire on the passenger side. Work boots. Tan leather, composite toe, same kind half the crew wore. My chest tightened up. I turned on the flashlight and walked around the back of the SUV. The boots were attached to legs. The legs were attached to a body lying face down in the dirt. I recognized the boots first. Specific scuff on the left heel where Ashton had caught it on a cable tray 2 months back. He'd bitched about it for a week because they were new. Ashton Noble, journeyman electrician. Same crew as me. 28 years old. Married. Lived in Rigby. Drove a blue Ford Ranger that burned through brake pads like it was a hobby. I moved the flashlight up. His work jacket was still on. I&L contractor logo on the back. But the jacket was torn. Not torn. Split. A massive gash ran from his left shoulder blade down to his lower back, wide enough that I could see inside. Ribs, tissue, things that should have been held together by skin. It looked like something had pulled him apart. I stood there, flashlight beam steady on Ashton's back, and didn't move. My brain was trying to process it, trying to fit it into something I understood. Animal attack, equipment accident, something. It didn't fit. I crouched down, keeping the light on him. His right hand was out to the side, fingers curled in the dirt. No gloves. I could see his wedding band. The wound wasn't bleeding anymore, or maybe it had bled out already. The dirt around him was dark, soaked through. I reached out, not sure why, and touched his wrist. Cold, stiff. I pulled my hand back. That was Ashton. That was it. I heard the scrape of boot on gravel behind me. I turned, swinging the flashlight up. The beam caught a man standing at the rear of the SUV, pistol raised, pointed straight at my chest. Tan uniform, plate carrier, medical pouch on his hip. Dark eyes locked on me, not blinking. "Don't move," he said. I didn't. He kept the pistol steady. Badge, slow. I shifted my weight, still crouched, and used my free hand to pull my INL badge from my jacket pocket. Held it up. The laminated card twisted on its lanyard in the cold air. He stepped closer, 2 controlled steps, eyes flicking from my face to the badge and back. The pistol didn't waver. He was maybe 6 feet, wiry build, short black hair, sharp cheekbones. Probably mid-30s. The name tape on his plate carrier said, Park. "Electrician?" he said, reading the badge. "Yeah. You know him?" He tilted his head toward Ashton's body without looking at it. Ashton Noble. My crew. Park's jaw tightened. He lowered the pistol maybe an inch. "You armed?" "No." "Turn around. Stand up slow." I stood, keeping the flashlight pointed down. Park moved in, patted my jacket pockets, waistband, checked my tool belt. Professional. "Quick." He stepped back. "You drove through the checkpoint," he said, turned around, took Lincoln Boulevard, then cut in through the service gate. "Yeah." He looked past me toward my truck, then back. "Why?" I didn't answer right away. I was trying to figure out if this guy was going to shoot me or arrest me or what. He didn't look panicked. He looked tired, and his hands were steady. "Heard the radio," I said. Courtney calling for Phoenix. Then Phoenix saying something about an intruder at the hot cell. Then nothing. Park's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. He holstered the pistol in one smooth motion and pulled a small flashlight from his belt. Clicked it on and swept it over Ashton's body. He crouched, checked the wound, touched Ashton's neck for a pulse he obviously wasn't going to find. "How long?" he asked. "Don't know, he's cold." Park stood. The checkpoint wasn't there to protect anyone from what's happening. It was meant to keep civilians from driving into it. I waited. Highway Patrol set it up an hour ago. Park continued. DOE directive. Lock down all routes within a 10-mile radius. Turn everyone back. No exceptions. What about the chlorine story? Cover. There's no chlorine release. I'd already figured that part. So what is it? Park looked at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the utility access hatch, sweeping his flashlight across the concrete rim. We don't know. Intruder breached the perimeter at 2345, crossed 3 fenced zones without triggering a single alarm. I followed him. That's not possible. Yeah. He stopped at the hatch, crouched again, ran his gloved fingers along the edge of the steel cover. Surveillance didn't catch it either. No visual, no thermal, just radio calls from patrol units reporting contact, then going offline. Phoenix? Dead, probably, along with his partner and 2 more at the MFC. Park stood and looked at me. His face was blank, controlled, but I could see the exhaustion around his eyes. This guy had been running all night. It crossed the fence, he said, moved through restricted zones, engaged armed personnel, and it did it without showing up on any system we have. I thought about that, about Ashton's body lying 10 yards behind me, about the wet ripping sound I'd heard on the radio when Phoenix's transmission cut off. Like it understood the layout, I said. Yeah, and the sensors. Park nodded once. Whatever it is, it knows this site. I didn't like that, didn't like it at all. I looked back toward the SUV, then at the open gate, then at Park. You out here alone? My partner went to pull Sergeant Alvarado out of the MFC. I stayed with the vehicle. That was 40 minutes ago. You got comms? Radio's intermittent. Cell service is down across the entire grid. I pulled my phone out. Still no bars. I put it back. Park watched me. You said you heard Courtney on dispatch. Yeah, calling for Phoenix. Then calling for anyone in the sector. She get a response? Just Phoenix. Then nothing. Park's jaw worked. He looked north toward the distant glow of the reactor complex lights. The target's last confirmed position was the hot cell building. That was 22 minutes ago. Since then, nothing. So it could be anywhere. Yeah. I turned that over. Tried to think it through. An intruder that didn't show up on cameras or motion sensors. That killed trained security personnel. That tore Ashton apart and left him in the dirt. Park was still looking at me. Why'd you come back in? Good question. I wasn't sure I had a good answer. Heard the calls. Figured something was wrong. So you drove toward it? Yeah. He studied me for another few seconds. Then he said, "Where were you headed?" Was going to cut south, loop around to Blackfoot, take Route 26 back to Idaho Falls. You know the site layout? Been here 6 years, electrician. I do generator work, breaker panels, some instrumentation. Park's expression shifted slightly. Not much. Just enough that I could tell he was thinking. You know the utility corridors? Most of them. Generator rooms, service stairs. Yeah. Ways to reach the advanced test reactor control building without using main roads. I thought about that. About the cable runs I'd pulled. The maintenance routes I'd used to avoid hauling equipment across campus in the heat. The old access tunnels that connected substations and pump rooms and backup generator sheds. Yeah, I said. A few. Park looked at me for a long moment. Then he walked past me, back toward the SUV, and pulled the radio handset from inside. Keyed it twice. Waited. Nothing. He clipped it back and turned. I need to get to the ATR control building, he said. Main roads are blocked or monitored. I go in on foot. I'm exposed for 2 miles. I waited. You drive me in, Park said. Off-road, maintenance access. I'll get you out after. I looked at him, at the pistol on his hip, at the medical pouch, at Ashton's boots sticking out from behind the tire. All right, I said. Park walked to my truck and climbed into the passenger seat without another word. I got in, set the flashlight in the cup holder, and started the engine. Park pulled his seatbelt on and checked his pistol, then reholstered it. I backed the truck up, swung around the SUV, and rolled forward through the gate. "Lights off," Park said. "Yeah." I kept the headlights off and drove by dash glow and starlight, same as before. The gravel track was rougher here, more washboard and ruts. I took it at 20 miles per hour, hands tight on the wheel. Park braced one hand on the door frame and kept his eyes on the landscape ahead. "Stay parallel to the fence for another half mile," he said, then cut west toward the substation access road. I knew the road he meant. Old cracked asphalt that ran behind the diesel generator sheds I'd been working all week. I nodded and kept driving. The radio on my belt crackled. Courtney's voice came through, faint and broken. "Any unit, please respond." Park pulled his own radio and keyed it. "Park to dispatch, I'm mobile, heading to ATR. Static." Then Courtney's voice clearer. "Travis, thank God. What's your status?" "Uninjured. En route with civilian contractor. ETA 15 minutes. "Civilian? Travis, you can't..." "He knows the access routes. We're off main roads. I'll check in when we're inside." Park released the key before Courtney could respond. He clipped the radio back to his belt and looked at me. "You good?" "Yeah." I cut left where the gravel track split, taking the narrower fork that curved west. The fence line fell away behind us. Ahead, I could see the dark shapes of low utility buildings and the angular silhouette of a transformer shed. The road got worse. I slowed to 15. Park didn't say anything, just kept scanning. I thought about the cable pull I'd done here in October. Ran 3-phase from the substation to Genset 4. Took 2 days, and my back hurt for a week after. The access road had been empty then. Just me and Kowalski hauling spools on a flatbed. Now it felt different. Too quiet. No wind, no animals. Just the low idle of my truck and the crunch of tires on gravel. I was about to say something when the impact hit. Something slammed into the truck bed with a heavy, denting thud. The whole frame rocked. I hit the brakes on instinct and the truck skidded to a stop. Park had his pistol out, twisting in his seat to look through the rear window. What the hell was that? "Don't know." I killed the engine, grabbed the flashlight. Park pushed his door open and stepped out, pistol raised, sweeping the area behind the truck. I got out on my side and moved around the tailgate. The bed was empty. No movement, no shape, nothing. I turned on the flashlight and held it low, angled into the bed. The beam caught the metal surface. There was a dent, maybe 8 inches across, just right of center. Fresh. The paint was scraped, and the metal was buckled inward. And there were feathers. Wet, mashed into the surface. Dark streaks smeared across the dent. I leaned in closer. The feathers were small, gray-brown, matted with something slick. I touched one. It came away on my glove, stuck to the fabric. Park moved up beside me, keeping his pistol trained outward. "What is that?" "Feathers. From what?" "Don't know. Small bird, maybe." I swept the flashlight across the rest of the bed. Nothing else. No blood. No body. Just the dent in the feathers pressed into the metal like something strong had slammed them there. I stepped back. Park did too. We both stood there, looking at the truck, the empty road, the dark shapes of buildings ahead. I clicked off the flashlight. The silence settled in, heavy, wrong. Even the truck's idle when I started it again sounded too quiet. The guard shack at the ATR access point came up on our right about 50 yards ahead. I could see it through the windshield, small concrete box, single window facing the road. Yellow security light mounted above the door. The window was gone, not cracked, not broken in one spot. The whole frame was blown outward, glass scattered across the gravel in chunks and powder. The metal frame bent out at sharp angles. I slowed the truck to 10 miles per hour and squinted through the dark. Blood smeared across the jagged edges of what was left of the window. dark streaks running down the concrete wall below it, still wet enough to catch the yellow light. The smear pattern looked like something, or someone, had been dragged straight through the opening. Not climbed, dragged. The blood went from inside the shack to outside in one continuous pull. I stopped the truck 20 feet back. Travis leaned forward in the passenger seat, one hand on the door frame. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, just looked. "That's Clark's post," he said finally. His voice was flat, professional, but I heard the edge under it. I kept both hands on the wheel. "You know him?" "Yeah." I waited. Travis pulled his pistol, checked it, kept it low in his lap. "Drive past, don't stop." I shifted back into drive and rolled forward at maybe 5 miles per hour. The headlights were still off. The shack passed on our right. I got a better look at the blood. Thick, smeared in lines that dragged horizontally across the broken frame. The door to the shack hung open. The interior light was on. I saw an overturned chair, a radio handset on the floor still attached to its coil cord, and more blood on the tile inside. No body. Travis kept his eyes on the shack as we passed. He didn't turn his head, just tracked it. I kept driving. The control building sat 200 yards ahead, 3 stories, concrete and steel. Narrow windows on the upper floors, big roll-up bay door on the ground level for equipment access. Normally, the whole thing would be lit up inside, even at this hour. Shift crews ran around the clock. But tonight, the windows were dark except for the dull red glow of emergency lighting spilling through the glass on the ground floor. I pulled the truck up to the side entrance near the personnel door and killed the engine. Travis was out before I even unclipped my seatbelt. I grabbed my flashlight from the cup holder and followed. The personnel door was propped open with a rubber wedge. Travis stopped at the threshold, pistol up, scanning the interior hallway. I stood behind him, flashlight off, waiting. The hallway ran about 30 feet straight ahead before turning left. Emergency lights mounted near the ceiling every 15 feet cast everything in dark red. The air smelled wrong, metallic, sharp. I'd smelled it before on job sites after someone got hurt bad. Blood and adrenaline and something else I couldn't name. Travis moved inside. I stayed 2 steps behind him. The hallway floor was scuffed linoleum, same kind they used in every building on site. Chairs from the break room were shoved out into the hall, 2 of them tipped over on their sides, one with a broken backrest. A clipboard lay face down near the wall. I stepped over it. Then I saw the magazines. Rifle magazines, the 30-round kind. 4 of them scattered across the floor in a trail that curved around the corner ahead. 2 were empty. I could tell by the way they sat. Light, hollow. The other 2 still had rounds loaded. One had a round halfway ejected from the feed lips, jammed crooked. I stopped walking. Travis saw them too. He crouched, picked up the closest one, checked it, set it back down. His face didn't change, but his jaw tightened. The trail of magazines led around the corner. Past that, I could see scuffed streaks on the floor, long dark smears that looked like boot heels dragged backward under weight. The streak stopped about 10 feet past the corner. Just ended. Nothing after that except clean floor. Travis moved to the corner, checked it, then waved me forward. I followed. Around the corner, the hallway opened into a wider room. Operations bullpen, desks arranged in rows, computer monitors dark, filing cabinets along the back wall. The emergency lights in here were dimmer. Shadows pooled under the desks. Travis pulled his radio off his belt and keyed it. Static. He switched channels, keyed again. More static. He kept cycling through. Maintenance, security, dispatch. Nothing but dead air and occasional bursts of white noise. Then he stopped on a frequency I didn't recognize. Higher band. He keyed it once. A voice came through. Male. Calm. Identify. Travis didn't hesitate. Park. Medic. ATR control building. Ground floor. Pause. Confirmed. Status. 2 personnel. 1 civilian contractor. Evac route compromised. Requesting guidance. Another pause. longer this time. Asset status? I caught that word. Asset. Not intruder, not suspect. Asset. Travis glanced at me, then back at the radio. Unknown. Last visual 23 minutes ago, hot cell sector. No contact since. Understood. Asset containment is priority. Do not engage. Confirm. Travis's hand tightened on the radio. Confirmed. Hold position. Extract team inbound, ETA 40 minutes. Copy. The voice cut out. Travis clipped the radio back to his belt and looked at me. You catch that? Yeah. Asset. Yeah. He didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. That word meant this wasn't some random intruder who got past the fence. This was something they knew about. Something they had a plan for. A plan that went bad. I kept that thought and filed it. Travis moved deeper into the bullpen, pistol up, scanning the desks. I followed with the flashlight still off. My eyes had adjusted to the red emergency glow enough to see shapes and outlines. Good enough. We passed the first row of desks. Empty. Second row, same. At the third row, Travis stopped and raised his fist. I froze. He pointed toward the back corner near the filing cabinets. I looked. A desk. Bigger than the others. Supervisor station, probably. The desk was shoved crooked. One corner lifted off the floor. A filing cabinet lay on its side next to it. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered. Under the desk, I saw boots, tan, composite toe, protective force issue. Travis moved forward, slow and controlled. I stayed close. The boots were attached to legs. The legs were attached to a man wedged under the desk with the filing cabinet pinning his lower half. His chest rose and fell. Shallow breaths. He was alive. Travis crouched, set his pistol on the floor within reach, and pulled a small flashlight from his vest. He clicked it on and aimed it at the man's face. Sergeant stripes on the sleeve. Name tape. Alvarado. Ross Alvarado. I didn't know him, but I'd seen the name on shift rosters. His face was pale, slick with sweat, eyes half open. Blood smeared across his jaw and neck. His right leg was twisted under him at an angle that made my stomach tighten. Not broken. Worse. Dislocated hip, maybe. Or femur snapped high near the joint. Travis touched his neck, checking pulse. Ross, you hear me? Ross's eyes moved, focused on Travis. His mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. Then a rasp. Park. Yeah, I'm here. Stay still. Ross tried to move his leg, and his whole body went rigid. A choked sound came out of his throat. Don't, Travis said. Don't move it. I'm gonna get this cabinet off you. I set my flashlight down and moved to the other side of the filing cabinet. Travis positioned himself opposite me. On 3, we lifted. The cabinet was heavy, maybe 200 pounds fully loaded. We got it up 6 inches, then a foot. Travis wedged his boot under it to hold it and shifted his grip higher. Again, he said. We lifted. The cabinet came free. We set it down to the side, slow and controlled. Ross sucked in a breath through his teeth. His leg was still twisted wrong, but at least the weight was off. Travis knelt next to him, pulled a medical pouch from his vest, and started checking Ross's leg without moving it. His hands were fast and methodical. He palpated the hip joint, checked for bleeding, tested the knee. Femur's intact, Travis said. Hips dislocated. You're gonna hate me in a second. Ross's breathing was getting faster, shallow and ragged. It was... He stopped, swallowed. It was one target. Just one. Travis pulled a small syrette from the pouch. Morphine, probably. He uncapped it. How many on your team? Travis asked. 4. Me, Hensley, Voss, Clark. Where are they? Ross didn't answer right away. His eyes moved toward the hallway. Gone. It took Hensley first. Grabbed him through the doorway. Voss went after it. I heard him shooting. Then nothing. Travis injected the syrette into Ross's thigh and depressed the plunger. Clark? Guard shack. He called it in. Then his radio went dead. That matched the blood at the window. Travis capped the empty Surrette and pocketed it. He waited 30 seconds, watching Ross's breathing. It slowed a little. The morphine was hitting. "I'm gonna reduce the hip," Travis said. "It's gonna hurt. Then we move you." Ross nodded. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Travis positioned himself at Ross's leg, hands on the knee and ankle. "On 3. 1. He pulled. Ross screamed, short and sharp. Then it cut off as the joint popped back into place with a sound I'll probably hear for the rest of my life. Travis held the leg steady for a few seconds, then lowered it flat. Ross was gasping, eyes squeezed shut, but his leg was straight again. "Done," Travis said. "Worst part's over." Ross opened his eyes. His face was gray. "It wasn't human," I looked at him. "Started human-sized," Ross said. His voice was steadier now, but still thin. Wearing a lab coat, white. We engaged from 15 meters. Hensley put 3 rounds center mass. It went down. Then it got back up. Travis pulled a rolled elastic bandage from his pouch and started wrapping Ross's knee for stability. "It dropped," Ross continued. "Went down on all 4s, moved like..." He stopped, breathed. "Like a dog. Fast. Voss tried to track it, but it was already past him. Then it stood up again. Upright. Taller than before." I didn't say anything, just listened. "It listens," Ross said. His eyes locked on Travis. "For breathing. It knows where you are when you breathe." Travis finished wrapping the knee and tied it off. "You're sure?" "Yeah." Ross's breathing was getting loud again, ragged and uneven. He heard it too. His eyes went wide. I can't stop." Travis put a hand on his shoulder. "You're fine. We're moving now. Just stay quiet as you can." But Ross kept breathing hard. Panic was setting in, and every breath was loud in the quiet room. I looked at Travis. He looked back. Neither of us said it, but we both thought it. If that thing was still in the building, it already knew we were here. I took Ross's left arm across my shoulders. Travis took his right. We got him upright in 3 tries, the third one making Ross bite down hard enough I heard his teeth click together. His breathing went shallow and fast. Travis counted down and we moved. The stairwell was behind a door marked Utility Access Only, 50 feet past the bullpen through a service corridor I'd pulled wire through maybe 6 times. The door was already propped open. I didn't ask if Travis had done that earlier or if someone else had left it that way. We shuffled Ross through sideways, his weight pulling heavy on my shoulder. The stairs went down, concrete and steel, emergency lighting every landing. 32 steps total. I knew because I'd counted them in October when I ran conduit to the backup panel on sub-level 2. Ross made a sound halfway down the second flight that wasn't quite a word. Travis told him we were almost there. We hit the landing and turned. The tunnel access was straight ahead. A heavy blast door set into reinforced concrete, the kind that needed a key card and a manual wheel to open. The door was half shut. That wasn't right. Those doors were either fully open or fully sealed. There wasn't supposed to be a middle. Travis stopped us 5 feet back. He told me to hold Ross. I shifted my grip and took more of the weight while Travis moved forward and crouched near the door. He pulled his flashlight and swept it across the gap. The beam caught something pale wedged in the opening, pressed between the door and the frame. It wasn't metal. It wasn't rubber. It looked organic, smooth in some places, ridged in others, with a texture that reminded me of cartilage but thicker. Travis holstered his flashlight and gripped the edge of the door with both hands. He leaned his weight into it. The pale thing flexed. Not broke, flexed. The door moved maybe 8 inches and stuck. Cold air rolled out through the gap, damp and chemical. I smelled ozone and something sharper. Coolant, maybe. The industrial kind we used in the reactor loops. Travis wedged his boot against the frame and pulled harder. The gap widened to a foot. He turned his head and told me to get Ross through. I half carried, half dragged Ross to the opening. He tried to help, but his leg wasn't working right. I angled him through the gap, scraping his vest against the door frame. Travis held the door steady. Ross stumbled through, and I followed, ducking under Travis's arm. Travis came through last and let the door swing back. It didn't close all the way. The pale thing was still wedged in there. The tunnel stretched in both directions, low ceiling with exposed conduit, and piping running overhead. Emergency lights every 20 feet, dim red glow reflecting off wet concrete. I'd been down here 4 weeks ago replacing a junction box near the coolant sampling station. Routine work. 2 hours with a clipboard and a voltmeter. The air had been dry then. Now it was slick. I could feel moisture on my face. Something moved in the shadows to our left. I turned, pulling Ross with me. Travis had his pistol up before I finished the motion. A woman stepped into the light. 5'4", slim build, long black hair pulled back, messy. She wore scrubs, light blue, soaked dark across the chest and sleeves. An INL badge hung crooked from a lanyard around her neck. The badge read, Solomon Aurora, Lab Tech. I didn't know her personally, but I'd seen the name on access logs when I worked near the MFC last year. She stopped 10 feet away, hands visible, palms out. Her eyes went from me to Ross to Travis and back. She asked if we were heading up. Her voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of control that sits on top of something bigger. Travis asked if she was hurt. She looked down at her scrubs and shook her head. She said it wasn't hers. The blue wasn't blood. It was coolant, reactor grade. She'd been in the sampling room when lockdown started. She'd been pulling samples from the primary loop, routine work, when the doors sealed and the ventilation cut. No alarm, no warning, just lockdown. She'd tried her radio and gotten nothing. She'd tried the manual release on the door and it didn't move. So she'd waited. She said she'd heard something in the vent above the sampling station maybe 20 minutes after lockdown. Scraping. Then the vent cover fell and something came through. Long limbs, wrong angles. It had moved across the ceiling and dropped onto one of the other techs, a man named Ruiz. She'd been on the other side of the sampling tanks and Ruiz had been near the door. She said the thing grabbed him and pulled him apart. Not tore, pulled. She said it looked methodical. She said Ruiz stopped making noise after maybe 15 seconds. Travis asked if it was still in there. Aurora shook her head. She said it left the same way it came in, back through the vent. She'd waited another 10 minutes, then forced the coolant release valve and flooded the floor to knee height. She said if it came back, it'd have to wade through radioactive coolant to reach her. Then the door had opened on its own maybe 5 minutes ago and she'd come out here. I asked if she knew what it was. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said yes. She said it started as a volunteer, federal contract, behavior study, DOE funded. She said the study was supposed to measure adaptability under controlled stress, environmental, psychological, physical. She said the subject had signed all the right paperwork. She said it was voluntary right up until it wasn't. Travis asked what that meant. Aurora said containment failed. The subject changed. She said it stopped responding to baseline human behavioral patterns. She said it started moving differently, thinking differently. She said the phrase they used in the briefings was adaptive restructuring. She said that was the clinical term. She said the reality was it wasn't human anymore, and it knew the facility layout better than most of the staff. Ross made a sound. I looked down. His eyes were open, more focused than before. He said it knew where to go. He said it avoided the patrols. It used the service corridors, the maintenance shafts. He said it knew. The lights overhead flickered. Not all of them, just the section behind Aurora, deeper in the tunnel. They dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. I recognized the pattern. I'd been watching that same pattern all week on the generators. Backup power trying to stabilize a load it couldn't handle. The system was cycling, trying and failing. I heard wet scraping, faint, coming from deeper in the tunnel past the flickering lights. It moved closer, then stopped. Total silence. I didn't move. Travis didn't move. Aurora turned her head slowly toward the sound, but didn't step back. The scraping rushed forward, fast. I saw movement in the red glow, something tall and thin sliding into view past the lights. The joints bent wrong. Too many of them. The limbs were too long. I dropped Ross's arm and grabbed my tool bag off my shoulder. I yanked the zipper and pulled the spray foam canister I'd been carrying since the diesel shed work last month. I ran to the blast door, shook the can hard, and blasted foam into the gap around the pale wedged thing. The foam hissed and expanded, yellow and chemical smelling. Something slammed into the other side of the door. The whole frame shook. A limb shoved through the gap before the foam could set, pale and segmented with joints that bent backward. Travis fired 3 rounds. I saw the impacts, the holes closed. Not healed, closed. Like the tissue just filled itself back in. I turned and ran back past Travis to where Ross had slumped against the wall. His vest had a keycard clipped to the chest strap. I yanked it free. Ross didn't resist. I looked up at the conduit overhead, traced the lines with my eyes, found the junction box I'd installed 4 weeks ago. I pulled my multi-tool, flipped out the screwdriver, and popped the panel cover in 2 seconds. Inside was the main feed for the tunnel lighting circuit. Normally it ran off building power. Right now it was on backup. I pulled Ross's key card and jammed it into the gap between the breaker contact and the housing, bypassing the load limiter. Then I flipped the breaker off and back on. The tunnel light surged. Every fixture went full bright, way past normal operating voltage. The red emergency glow turned white-blue. I heard a sound from the other side of the door. High-pitched. Not a scream. Something else. The limb shoved through the gap started convulsing. The joints bent and unbent rapidly, uncontrolled. Travis grabbed the limb with both hands and shoved it back through the gap. The foam was half set, sticky and dense. He forced the limb through and the foam sealed around the gap. The convulsing stopped. The lights overhead started dimming again, the breaker tripping back to safe load. I pulled the keycard out and the system stabilized. Travis looked at me. I looked at him. Ross was still against the wall, breathing shallow. Aurora stood near the sampling room door, watching the blast door. I told Travis we needed to move. He nodded. We got Ross upright again. Travis took one side. I took the other. We moved toward the stairs. Aurora didn't follow. I looked back. She was standing near the sampling room door, one hand on the keypad. She said she was staying. She said if the foam failed, she could lock herself in the sampling room and flood the whole section with coolant. She said someone needed to stay. I told her that was a bad idea. She said it wasn't optional. She said containment was her job, and she was the only one left who knew the system. Travis told her the extract team was inbound, 40 minutes. She nodded. She said that was fine. She said 40 minutes was enough time. She pulled her key card and swiped it. The sampling room door opened. She stepped inside and turned back. She told us to seal the stairwell door behind us. Then the sampling room door closed. We hauled Ross up the stairs. 32 steps. My shoulders burned by the second landing. Travis's breathing was controlled but hard. Ross didn't make a sound. We hit the ground floor corridor and kept moving. The emergency lights were still on. The bullpen was still empty. We went through the side exit, the same door we'd come in through. The wedge was still there. I kicked it free and let the door close behind us. The parking lot was lit with headlights. 3 SUVs, tan and white, DOE security decals. Sirens in the distance getting closer. I saw men in tactical gear moving near the vehicles. Travis stopped. He told me to set Ross down. We lowered Ross to the asphalt near my truck. Travis knelt next to him, checking his pulse. I stepped back, breathing hard. Travis slumped forward, not slow, just dropped. I caught him by the vest and eased him down. I said his name. He didn't respond. I checked his pulse, steady but faint. I pulled his vest open and saw blood soaked through his uniform shirt on the left side, below the ribs, fresh. I hadn't seen him get hit. I didn't know when it happened. I yelled for a medic. One of the tactical guys turned and ran over. 2 more followed. They took over. One of them pushed me back. I stepped away and stood there watching them work on Travis. Ross was conscious, talking to one of the responders. I didn't hear what he said. Someone grabbed my arm. I turned. A man in tan uniform, plate carrier, rifle slung across his chest. I recognized him. The checkpoint. The man with the scar through his eyebrow. Ortiz. He asked where I thought I was going. I told him I was going home. Idaho Falls. He said no, I wasn't. He asked my name. I told him. He pulled a notepad from his vest and wrote it down. Then he held out his hand. He told me to give him my badge. I pulled my INL badge from my jacket pocket and handed it over. He looked at it, then clipped it to his vest. He told me to wait by the truck. I asked if I could leave. He said no. He asked if I had my keys. I said yes. He told me to hand them over. I gave him my keys. He walked to my truck, opened the driver door, and pulled my radio off the seat. Then he locked the truck and pocketed my keys. I stood there. The sky was getting lighter. Not dawn yet, but close. Gray spreading across the horizon. The sirens were louder now. More vehicles pulling into the lot. Ortiz talked into his radio. Someone responded. I didn't catch what they said. I sat down on the curb near the truck. One of the responders was still working on Travis. Another one had Ross on a stretcher. The tactical guys were setting up a perimeter. Floodlights got turned on, washing out the emergency lighting. I waited. Ortiz came back maybe 20 minutes later and told me to move to one of the SUVs. I asked why. He didn't answer. I got in the back seat. The doors didn't open from the inside. Ortiz stood outside talking to someone I couldn't see. The sun came up. I watched it through the window. I didn't go home that morning.